I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. This Sunday marks the 15th anniversary of the attack on the World Trade Center. September 11th, 2001 is a very important day to people all over the world. The morning started like any other day for most people. Students were getting settled into a new school year while reporters and anchors were getting ready to do their typical back-to-school segments. But on this Tuesday morning, by 8:52 a.m., all major networks were live with footage of the World Trade Center, minutes after the first plane hit the North Tower.
Most of us were too young to remember or even know what happened. But if we ask our parents and teachers, they remember exactly where they were and what they were doing on this horrific day.
I was principal at Connecticut High School at the time, and I will never forget when we received word from our district office that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center, which at first we thought was just, okay, this was a bad accident.
I was in the 6th grade and I was in class. At my school, they actually didn't tell us what was going on, but a lot of students were getting picked up.
I was in this classroom in age 20, and it was my first year here as a teacher. I was with my 10th grade class, and the students came in very excited and told me that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center, which I really almost couldn't believe.
I was in my 8th grade year in middle school, and throughout the day, different students would be coming and going, and you'd see them crying, and nobody really knew what was going on.
I was here in Coldsman Harbor. I was a social studies teacher, and I was right outside, which is now the social studies office, then was the media room when I found out what happened. At first, we just thought it was a small plane crashed into one of the World Trade Centers because they're so big. And then we found out later on what was going on. And I remember I was right by the senior commons and I heard that the first tower fell. And then I was in the media room, again, which is the social studies office, when the second tower fell.
I had a teaching assistant in the back of the room that pretty much was crying the whole time. And I had to have a pretty brave face because 7th graders were looking at me for reassurance. I was thinking, we must be at war.
On September 11th, I was working in Jersey City at the harbor side. So our office was directly across from the Trade Center. You could throw a stone and be on the other side in downtown Manhattan. We had gotten word that the first plane had hit, and it was before the stock market had opened. So we ran to the windows. We had seen the second plane come across, and we had actually seen the second plane hit. And everybody kind of looked at each other like, this is real. You know, this is something that we have to take seriously.
These adults are wonderful resources for you to learn about the events of 9/11. The Hawk Talk news team understands the importance of the national faculty and staff members about their experience and how we can continue the memory of 9/11.
So it was a Tuesday, 9/11, so 3 days later, I was in the city, and one thing that just sticks with me is there were just, like, on every street corner, there were just posters of missing people. I just remember trembling, just looking at all these fathers and mothers and sons and uncles and aunts that were missing, that were gone, that probably weren't coming back.
It was almost impossible in the days afterwards to not run into somebody who knew someone who was either who had lost their lives or had been there to help with the rescue. You couldn't help but see the smoke coming from Manhattan. Students can really understand just how it hit home. It was just a terrible experience, and we never thought we would feel better at that time.
I remember the smell from Queens, and that's a big thing because it was far away. But the pictures don't do it justice. The videos don't really do it justice, but you could smell it and see it from pretty far away. And then the smoke that stayed where the tower stood for weeks as you crossed over the bridges and you looked to the skyline was the same because the smoke filled where the towers used to be.
When it happened, you knew that your life was really never going to be the same, that the country had changed. Whether or not, you lost someone immediately related to you or a friend, family member, you knew that something was different. And to be honest, it was a really uneasy feeling. I was terrified.
When I did get home to my own kids, they jumped off the bus and they didn't know about it. Fighter jets were going across the sky, and I stood out with my own children and just kind of explained that instead of running in the house, that they were there to protect us.
I remember thinking, this is what a war zone must be like. I mean, and I took comfort in hearing those jets. We felt protected because we did not know if another attack was coming the next day, the day after. We were waiting for it.
I think one of the most important ways to make sure that future generations understand what happened to this country on 9/11 is by doing what we're doing right now, by talking about it in schools, by sharing our experiences with our friends and families. At museums, we have some nice memorials that have been built. Even on the DC trip that we take with the 8th grade at the museum, there's a really nice memorial.
I think people have to continue to talk about it, and it's kind of like when a building goes up and they name it somebody who's so important at that point, and then 8 years later people have no idea who that person is. That's sad, because they should continue to know who it is. But I think if we continue to educate people, and we have a greater chance of keeping it alive and all.
Personal experiences, whether they're good or bad, I think the positive and the negative experience has to be forwarded to the younger generation, so they don't forget. They don't forget the lives that were lost, not only in the building, but to the first responders, the firefighters, the police, anybody who was down there.
The people who did this horrific act wanted to destroy America. But did the attacks on the World Trade Center stop Americans? No, it made us stronger. After 9/11, the country came together and patriotism was extremely strong. We became stronger by rebuilding and honoring those who died and those who helped. We had superheroes rise up and help our fellow man, but they didn't wear capes. They wore jackets like firemen wear, hats like police officers wear, and carried bags like EMTs carry.
I don't think 9/11 should ever be forgotten for any American or anyone really in this world. For myself as a teacher, I think it's important to remember this day every year, not just on the anniversaries, 5, 10, 15, because we live in a world that, as wonderful as it can be, and this country is full of freedom, we are still surrounded by people who hate us. 9/11 is very important for us because it's something that didn't just happen and pass away. Unfortunately, it still continues to this very day.
I think some people had a better hold on life and appreciation for life after it happened, and I think people kind of go back to their own ways after that. But I don't know, we're in a tough time in our society right now. I wish that we could be closer as human beings and realize we're all just human beings and we look different and things, but we should just treat each other as equals.
The Hawk Talk News team thanks the faculty and administration for taking part in our interviews for this 15th memorial broadcast. Students, please reach out to your teachers and parents. Ask questions. I'm sure that they will be open with sharing their experiences. Even though you weren't alive or were very young when 9/11 occurred, the events are still important to you. At some point, it will be up to you to explain to your children about what happened on that horrific day. We ask you to think about what you can do to help ensure that the events of 9/11 aren't forgotten for the future generations. Please take a moment of silence for the lives that were lost during this horrific act of violence. Over the weekend, please continue to think about the tragedy and the lives that were lost, but also how we can bring back the American spirit. Please take this time to speak with your homeroom teachers.